All right, you guys. So today we are going to figure out the last lesson of this unit with exponent properties. And today we are talking about using negative exponents. All right. So to kind of explain to you what this is, this first little box here is more about showing you what happens when you start to see negative exponents and what they do. Kind of explains it a little bit. So as we go down the line here, we know that 3 cubed, or 3 to the third power, is 27. Oops, sorry. Get my writing utensil going here. Would be 27. Okay. 3 squared would be 9. 3 to the first would be 3. And 3 to the 0 power we know is 1. So as you start to look at what's happening here, these are all dividing by 3 as we go down the line. Because each one, if you go up the line, is times 3, right? This one would be times 3 again. This one would be times 3 again to get the answers. So as you go up, they multiply by 3, which means to come back down, we have to do the opposite, which is divide by 3. So when you get to the negative exponents, this is like taking 1 on 3 to the 0 divided by 3 to get here, right? Well, if we take 1 divided by 3, we have 1/3, or 0.3 repeating, but we don't ever going to use a decimal. So in this section, talking about those would be like 1/3. Well, again, if you take 1/3 and divide it by 3, you get 1/9. So look at what happens here. Here's a 1. If we go up, we go 3, 9, 27. If we go down, we go 1/3, 1/9. So hopefully you're thinking about what this bottom one would be. If I divide by 3, gives us 1/27. Okay, so what happens is it becomes a fraction, but it's actually the opposite, like reciprocal of the positive. So let's think about that for a couple minutes. If I have like 2 to the third, 2 to the third equals 8. So if I have 2 to the negative third, it becomes 1/8. So you can kind of see that it drops to the bottom, and it's also a positive number. It's never an actual exponent there. So reciprocal, opposite reciprocal. So if I have, to explain this kind of a little bit more, in case you see the variable side of it, this would be kind of like saying if I had, let's say, 4 squared, right? That's 16. 4 to the negative 2 actually ends up being 1/4 squared. So this guy drops to the bottom, and the exponent becomes a positive. So this gives us 1/16. If you take it one step further and simplify it. So when we're talking about variables, like this guy over here, x to the negative a, we can't actually solve. So it becomes the positive reciprocal, the opposite reciprocal. So this would be dropping to the bottom, and the a becomes positive a. So let's talk about that again. It becomes the positive reciprocal when dealing with exponents. Okay, the positive reciprocal. So it drops to the bottom of the fraction, and the exponent becomes positive. Okay, so ultimately, when you're solving these, you will never ever have a negative exponent in your answer. So I'm going to put that in here too. Okay, big star. No negative exponents in our answers. Because if you're simplifying them, they should drop to the bottom and become a positive. No negative exponents in the answers. Okay? All right, so let's talk about these down here. So x to the negative 5 actually becomes 1 over. This guy drops to the bottom, and it becomes a positive exponent. So 1 over x to the 5th. Remember, positive reciprocal. So 3m squared. Now, here's where we have to start thinking about it again, that every piece of the term actually has an exponent. So if that exponent is negative, it has to drop to the bottom. So this guy, remember, has a little 1 right here. Okay? So actually, the only part of this that has a negative exponent is the m. So the m is the part that's going to drop, and the 3 is going to stay on top. So 3 stays because it has a positive exponent. M drops to the bottom and becomes a positive exponent as well. So 3 over m squared. Negative exponents drop to the bottom and become positive. Everything else stays up top. Okay? So this goes back to our properties that we already learned. I have a multiplication problem, so I'm going to multiply my coefficients. 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. Okay, and then I'm going to add my exponents. So 8 plus negative 7 is 1. So this is x to the first. Now, both of these have positive exponents, 1 and 1. So they're going to stay on top, and it just becomes negative 18x. Nothing that has to drop because they don't have negative exponents. This is a negative number, not a negative exponent. Okay, let's go to the next one. Outside means we're distributing. Remember, there's a 1 right here. So this is distributed to both of these. This becomes 3 to the negative 2 and x to the negative 6. They both have negative exponents, so they both have to drop to the bottom. That becomes 1 over 3, now they become positive, squared x to the 6th. And then we have to simplify. So I can go ahead and do 3 squared, which is 1 over 9 x to the 6th. Again, negative exponents drop to the bottom and become positive, and then we simplify. Okay, so it's that added extra step of having that exponent drop to the bottom. Okay, let's try another one. So negative 2 on the outside, we distribute to the 8, to the x, and to the y. Remember, there's a 1 here. So this becomes negative 8 to the negative 2 power, x to the negative 10th power, and y to the positive 8. Okay, now these right here both have negative exponents, so they have to drop. And y to the 8th has a positive, so it stays on top. So y to the 8th over negative 8 squared x to the 10th. They drop and become positive exponents. Then we simplify. I can do negative 8 squared, which is 64. So y to the 8th over 64 x to the 10th. All of your properties that you've already learned are still into place. Okay, we're still doing the same exact thing with all those. We're just dropping those negatives to the bottom of a fraction. That's the new step. Okay, so let's go to the next one. We're back to multiplication, right? So nothing's being distributed. We're going to add exponents. So a to the negative 5th with a to the 7th gives me negative 5 plus 7, which is a squared. Okay, b to the 8th plus b to the negative 3. So 8 plus negative 3 gives me b to the 5th. Negative 12 with c plus 7 with c gives me negative 5. So c to the negative 5th. Okay, which one is negative? That's our c. So it has to go where? To the bottom. So a squared b to the 5th stays on top, and c to the 5th drops and becomes positive. Okay? All right. Hopefully you're starting to catch on a little bit here. Coming easier. So the next one is division. So we still do the same stuff our property told us to do, which is subtract top to bottom. Okay, so we're still subtracting top to bottom. I'm just going to put that in here. Still subtract top to bottom. Now, that sometimes is going to create a negative, but we're okay with that now. So this would be h to the 4 minus 6, which would give me h to the negative 2. If it's negative, it has to drop. So in this case, nothing stays on top, so we have a 1 up there, and h squared becomes positive on the bottom. Okay. Next one, same thing, division. So we divide our coefficients. 14 divided by 7 is 2. And we subtract. Now, look at this one. This is w to the 4th minus negative 2. So it's like saying minus negative 2. You have to do both of them just like we do on all of our negative numbers. So back-to-back negatives actually make this positive. So it's like saying 4 plus 2. So we end up having 2w to the 6th. We don't have to change anything on this one. So if it's a negative and you're subtracting, you have to be able to write it out as 4 minus the negative, top to bottom. Okay? All right, let's focus on that here for a second. So if we've got x's, subtract down this way. 4 minus 2 gives me x squared. This one will be y to the negative 3rd minus 2, which gives me y to the negative 5th. Okay, negatives have to drop, so x squared stays on top, and y to the 5th goes to the bottom and becomes positive. Okay, same thing over here. Divide coefficients. So negative 24 divided by 2 is negative 12. This would be x to the 5th minus negative 2, which means we add, so it's x to the 7th. The 12 doesn't drop because it has a positive exponent. It's just a negative number. Whoops. Positive exponents don't have to worry about it, okay? All right. Got a few more here. Hopefully it's starting to make sense to you. So back to adding in more properties. Top row first, multiplication. So 6 times 5 gives me 30. And then I add my a's. So 3 plus 9 gives me a to the 12th. Over, I didn't touch the bottom, so it stays, negative 12 a to the 14th. Okay. I can't really divide 30 by negative 12, but I can simplify. And 6 goes into both of them, so I would have 5 over negative 2. Subtract my a's, so 12 minus 14 gives me a to the negative 2. Okay, this has a positive exponent of 1, but this guy is negative, so it has to drop. So 5 is going to stay on top, negative 2 is on the bottom already, and a squared is going to drop down there with it. Okay, negative exponents drop to the bottom and become a positive. All right, one more step added in here. Now we've got multiplication to start, so 2 gets distributed to 3x and y. So I've got 3 squared, x squared, y squared times 2x to the 4th, y to the 3rd. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. That makes this 9x x squared y squared times 2x to the fourth y to the third. Let's go ahead and solve this. I've got 9 times 2, which gives me 18. Adding my exponents because it's multiplication. So I've got x to the sixth, y to the fifth. Now, the bottom comes back into play here. So over 6x to the eighth y. Okay, now we're going to divide and subtract. 18 divided by 6 gives me 3. 6 minus 8 is x to the negative 2. And 5 minus 1 is y to the fourth. Okay, 3 and y both have positive exponents. They're going to stay on top. So 3y to the fourth. And x squared is going to drop to the bottom and become positive. All right, hopefully you're feeling better. We got one last one here to top it all off. Okay, so inside first gives me distributing. So I'm going to go negative 2, negative 2, negative 2. So I'm going to have 2 to the negative 2, x to the negative 8, and y to the sixth times. Now I've got to do 4. So 4, 4, and 4 gives me 2 to the fourth, x to the negative fourth, and y to the negative eighth. Okay, let's go ahead and solve those. So remember, 2 to the negative 4, well, if I was thinking in my head 2 squared, 2 to the negative 2, that would be 4. So 2 to the negative 2 is a reciprocal, so 1/4. So this is 1/4 x to the negative 8, y to the sixth. 2 to the fourth would be 16, x to the negative fourth, y to the negative eighth. Now, I got to multiply here and add exponents. So 1/4 times 16 is like 16 divided by 4, so that's 4. And then negative 8 and negative 4 gives me x to the negative 12. 6 plus negative 8 gives me y to the negative 2. And then I have that all over the top part up here comes back into play. So 2x to the negative 7, y to the negative 3. Okay, now this 3 out here still has to be distributed, but I'm going to go ahead and simplify this one down here because it can be easily with the coefficients. So I'm going to divide and subtract now before I distribute. So 4 over 2 gives me 2. Negative 12 minus negative 7. So I'm just going to write that out for you again so you can see it. Negative 12. So this would be x to the negative 12 minus negative 7. So it's like negative 12 plus 7, which gives me x to the negative fifth. And then we have our y. So it's y negative 2 minus negative 3. So negative 2 plus 3. Yep, negative 2 plus 3 would be y to the first. So this would be y. Okay. And then this part is now coming back into play. So to the third power. So here to the third gives me here, here, and here. So I'm going to have 2 to the third, x to the negative 15th, and y to the third. All right. So for these two, I've got 2 to the third is 8. X to the negative 15 has to drop down here, and y to the third stays up top. Okay. All right. Come down here to the bottom. Do these 3 on your own. Everything is the same except negative exponents drop to the bottom when you're done and become positive. Remember, no negative exponents in your answers. Okay, work hard. Give it a shot.